Welcome to episode 79 of Nintendo Therapy, a show about the latest Nintendo news and rumors, as well as a celebration of all of the things Nintendo. My name is Kevin, and with me this week on the internet to talk about Joy-Cons, keychains, and Lego is Harrison.
Always on the internet. That's true. I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here.
Glad to hear it. So, not a lot of official news this week, but plenty to talk about. It's one of those weeks. Have you been playing anything interesting?
I've been not on Switch, so I'll just keep it short. But I have been playing this game that I really like. It's so much fun, and I can't win. I can't beat it. I've won one game in the past 3 days. Probably about 5 hours, 6 hours of playtime. Um, is there any game that you really like that you just cannot beat?
Um, I mean, right off the top of my head, it's hard to think of any. But
Yeah, I know.
I
Well,
remember mentioning when we reviewed Comic Zone for the Spotlight games. That's a game I've tried to get into like 1,000 times, and I'm just terrible at it. And I remember when we reviewed it, I was like, I think this is just the final straw. I just need to finally admit to myself I'll never be good at this game.
yeah, that's a good example. That's a good example. I don't have a good Nintendo example, so I'll kind of leave it there. I have some other good observations when we get into our spotlight later. How about you?
Well, the thing that I wanted to talk about that I keep seeing people bring up is there is much ado online this week about the Switch Joy-Con charger that Nintendo is finally offering. Um, and I see a lot of people speculating that it means like the Switch 2 will have similar Joy-Cons that will probably also be compatible with this thing because they're saying like, oh, why release this 7 years into the Switch if it's not going to have something to do with the Switch 2? I don't know why people aren't focusing on the opposite, where I think it's more likely it could mean that the Switch 2 in and of itself is not going to be capable of charging the Joy-Cons we have now. It'll be compatible with them, but maybe it can't charge them, especially when you take into account the magnet rumor things we had before, the magnet Joy-Cons. Um, anyway, what I'm saying is it'll probably be compatible with them, but maybe you can't click them on there. Maybe you can't charge them. So if you're looking to hold on to your spare Joy-Cons, this is a device that will be good for you. So basically
I
the opposite of what people are saying.
Yeah, I did not think of it that way. And now that you're saying it, you're probably right. Because something that I saw brought up, which I thought that's kind of dumb, is what if on the next system none of the Joy Cons are chargeable from the system? Like because what if the new system has Joy Cons and you can plug them into this charger, and the reason why we're getting the charger now is because new Joy Cons, old Joy Cons won't be compatible. But what you're saying makes a lot more sense. Um, so you're
Just
probably
another
right.
wait and see situation, and then what happens with these things, it's funny, nobody ends up going back and saying like, oh, see, we called that, we called that, and we called that. It's just you speculate and you wait, and then when the new thing shows up, you're so excited you forget about all the specific predictions you made.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think this is just an example of Nintendo maybe having plans for something and then releasing something years later. We've seen it before. Like, I was trying to look up like 3DS accessories that came out, or I mean, come on. I mean, we had 3DS. We had the new 3DS come out in 2017, I believe. If we're looking just at hardware,
Yeah, that was back
but
before they were fully confident Switch, I think. You know what I mean? Because another thing I've seen from that period is a lot of people asking why the Luigi's Mansion remake was done for 3DS and not for Switch back then. So that was a weird year for Nintendo.
The charger looks like a Switch grip, so I'm pretty convinced that this is just meant for this generation of the Joy-Cons slash Nintendo Switch system. Um, I did add that I thought because of NES World Championship that perhaps because these also charge the NES controllers, perhaps they released it alongside with NES World Championship. But then I thought, well, then they would have released a special edition or a bundle or something. But
Yeah, slap a coat of
then,
paint on there.
yeah, but then I also thought perhaps this is also Nintendo being Nintendo and just missing that opportunity. Because, yeah, they could have exactly put some, just put a wrap or some paint on there, bundled it all together, um, and however much that's going to be, right? And maybe you bundle it with the NES controllers as well. So I also think, and you saw it in my notes, this is also a result of people. The news in video games is not keeping up right now, and you can't tell me otherwise. Um, I think I think we have this need for like a daily news cycle when it comes to video games, and this is a fun one to talk about. But I think it created buzz because I think some people are just bored. Not us, not me and you, but uh, everyone else. They're the problem.
Well, yeah, a lot of the news sites, that's why I said at the beginning it was kind of a slow news week, is like a lot of the Nintendo news sites I peruse for this podcast, it's mainly just like non-stories being posted right now. It's stuff like, oh, this game is teasing an announcement coming soon, but there's no real announcement. Or like, this development team says they're developing new games right now. No specific games, but just we're developing games right now. Like, there's a lot of weird non-stories out there right now. Um, so yeah,
So
it's just it's a countdown to Switch 2, basically, which
yeah,
hopefully is you know what's next for Nintendo is Zelda in September at this point. And then after that is Mario Luigi Brothership in November.
you cut out just a little bit until you said Zelda, but I think we got it. You cut out for about 2 seconds there. Um,
Okay.
but anyways, speaking of which, have you do you know anyone that's played the NES World Championship game?
I think Sean was on the fence about it. He was texting me. I don't know if he ended up getting it. It's the type of game where when he was talking to me, I told him, I was like, that's the perfect type of game where I'll like watch people play it on like a YouTube clip or a Twitch stream or something. But I don't think I'm going to end up playing it myself.
The more I read about it and the more I watch it, because I've been watching people play it, the more I want to play it. But um, well, for listeners that don't know the format, it's not the full games. You're trying to get the fastest time on like sections of like Super Mario Brothers, or you're trying to like kill the Octoroks the fastest in Legend of Zelda. And then there's a lot of collectibles you can get through either achievements or digital currency.
Which it's weird that they
Uh,
abandoned the NES Remix brand because it's very similar to NES Remix.
right. So there's always going to be that criticism, which is the number one criticism I've seen with this game is not having the full games available. But that makes me want to play it more because I mean, if I want to play Mario Brothers 3, I mean, come on, I got like at least three different ways I can play it right now. Uh, so most people that are going to have NES World Championship, or wait, is that yes? Most people that are going to buy this game are going to have these games already, I assume, or and are fans of these games already. My worry is that it is a $30 game. I'm not sure if I would be interested in playing it for more than a few weeks because if there's no incentive outside of a bunch of people I don't know playing it and getting faster times, once I get all of the collectibles, I'm not sure if I want to play it anymore. So I'm kind of on the fence about it.
I think a lot of people are. I wonder if Nintendo expects this to drive any traffic towards Switch Online since almost all the games in it are available on there. And if you haven't signed on yet, but you play this thing and you're like, oh, you know what? Now I've got an itch to play the original Zelda again. Maybe I'll sign up for another month. And I don't know. It's tough to say because it also feels like anyone this game would appeal to would already be a Switch Online subscriber. So I don't know how they break those analytics down, but I don't know. I just don't know.
I would just like to see more of a connection because I bring up, it's an online leaderboard, which is exciting, but I think it loses interest. But if you have friends that are playing games in an online service, or perhaps in the Miiverse or whatever it is, then it could be more fun, or there can be new incentives that they create to play the games. I'm just not convinced that Nintendo is actually going to keep up with a game like this to create new interest after a few months. So I'm kind of on the fence. I might pick up a used physical copy because they're pretty cool, and then I have the option of keeping it if I want. I'm not sure. Um, but it sure does look fun.
Yeah, power to the players who are enjoying it. um, so I saw that you put in here this news article about these keychains, which I've seen on my feed. I haven't ever clicked on the article to really read about them, but now that I see them here, they're pretty cool looking.
Yeah, so Nintendo released some gotcha keychains. Not sure how much it costs in Japan, but you get them out of the gotcha, coin machines. And from the pictures I saw, there are 12 of them. Either the joysticks or the buttons to, let's see, we have GameCube, N64, SNES, Famicom, um, Game and Watch, NES. And the key part about these is that if you take them apart, the buttons are a one-to-one of what you would find on a licensed Nintendo product. So you could theoretically take these apart, take the buttons out of them, and put them into your licensed controller, and it would work the same. But I just think they're pretty cool. Kevin, which one stands out to you? Which one, like, if you had to choose one, which one would you get?
I like the Super Famicom one and the Super Nintendo ones. To be honest, I think those are the only two I actually like. As big a Nintendo fan as I am, I don't know if like just the buttons alone from like a GameCube controller. I don't know. There's something almost off-putting about the way the pieces of the controller by themselves look to me.
Oh, I see what you mean. Oh, I think I get it now. Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, I like the GameCube ones, but it might just be because it's purple. It's the GameCube purple. Everyone knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I was just thinking like the joystick would be fun to kind of fidget with.
Yeah, a little fidget spinner in your or what the cube,
Yeah,
the little fidget cube.
yeah, and I'm not sure how clicky the buttons are. Although I'm assuming they kind of they feel similar. Uh, but anyways, I would just end with saying Nintendo, like, bring cool stuff to other countries. Like like it's like this is such an odd thing to like have and just kind of have out there, but I wish we had things like this in America. But I guess we just don't have gotcha machines in America.
Yeah, I wonder what we do have that they don't. You know what I mean? I wonder if there's any cool Nintendo stuff they're not getting. Some Nintendo
Um,
stuff I know everybody's getting though is well, it leaked, but we saw the price tag for the another Nintendo Lego set this week. Um the Super Mario World themed Mario and Yoshi set, which is apparently going to be $130, which of course, anytime these sets are revealed, I feel like anytime the price for anything is revealed, there's people on the internet saying it's way too expensive. Like literally subscription services that are like $5 a month, too expensive. But yeah, this leads to a conversation about Lego being too expensive. And I just like to remind people, I think I brought this up every other time Legos come up on our show. Like 20 years ago, I did the math when I worked at Target, and each Lego set is priced pretty consistently at about 10 to there's a few random ones that are 12 cents per piece. So like 12 cents on the high end. This one surprisingly is on the lower end. It's 10 cents a piece, which you'd think the Nintendo license would be on the higher end of things. But yeah, long story short, Lego sets, they're 10 cents a piece. The thing is, these sets have a ton of pieces. 1,200 pieces is a lot of pieces. So, yeah, that's why it's $130.
it's it's normie brained, or however we're going to say it. Like you see a toy, you see $130, you think that's an expensive toy, or not you, but the people you're talking about. Um, see it in that way, and they are like that's why I don't have Legos. Trust me. I mean, I sit around and think about all of the rich person hobbies I would have if I was a rich person, and Legos would be. I mean, I would have a whole Lego room if I was rich. Um, that's how much I would be into them. Like if money wasn't an option, yeah, I would have all of those sets. I think that would be super super fun. But um but it's
Yeah,
not the
the thing
case.
is, there's not a lot of appealing sets that are in the $20 range. You know what I mean? Those are like what, 200 piece sets.
Yeah.
So, uh,
Yeah.
people see those and they're like, "Oh, why would I buy this? I'll build it in an hour and be done with it." And it's it's just how it is.
Right. And I'm just happy that it exists because I enjoy just I had the opportunity to watch. I can watch somebody put together a $5,000 set for free. I can watch people do that, and then I don't have to also have the extra stuff as well. Which again, if I had that money, it wouldn't matter. And shout out to there's a man, Miles Turner. He plays for like the Indiana Pacers. And shout out to like professional athletes that are really into Legos or any type of nerd culture that is just you know different in that world. Because he's like really into like Legos and Star Wars and well things that just keep you out of trouble if you're a rich athlete. But yeah, anyways, do we have any other
I was gonna ask you, have you bought any of the expensive Lego sets? I did buy an X-wing. I couldn't buy that Death Star. That's or like the Millennium Falcon one. That one's crazy. But I haven't bought any Nintendo ones yet either.
I don't buy them, and
Oh,
one is money, but the bigger one is just that it's like once I moved abroad, I rarely buy like I only have a few digital games. Like I try to not buy. I just moved houses last week. I try not to buy things that don't fit into like a suitcase or
yeah.
don't have a purpose outside of like being like once I put it together. But I will say, with where I live, I've gotten really into learning about the like the fake Legos they have around because there are like hundreds of fake Lego brands out there. And usually when I go to like a big like outlet store or supermarket, I'll usually see the like the off-brand Legos, but they are like one-to-one sets. Again, I just look at them. I would never like buy them for that reason because I don't want extra things. Uh, I do think it's it's interesting. Awesome off-brand is the subreddit. I'll say.
Okay, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's different over here. Um, that's all. That's all. I'm kind of rambling now. Was there any other news items for today?
Nothing really I saw that I wanted to really get into. We do have the spotlight to go over, the holdover spotlight if you wanted to get into that.
Let's do that. And hey, we might have a little uh for the first time ever, audience. We might have a shorter episode between me and Kevin. That never happens. But hey, we've been giving you those bonus episodes, and we go over almost every episode.
Oh, I think
So
we might have something happening next week for the show that I forgot to tell you about before we recorded. So remind me about that when we're done. And listeners, you
um,
can look forward to that. But anyway,
it's
let's get into our spotlight game. So this week, even though we were supposed to do it last week, we've got the Sega Genesis classic Space Harrier II, which was released in October of 1988 for the Mega Drive slash Genesis. It was a first year title for the system. Came out, like I said, in 1988. In 1989, Ace Magazine listed Space Harrier 2 as one of the top 3 best games available for the Mega Drive at the time, along with Altered Beast and Thunder Force 2. Um, what did you think of the game, Harrison?
so I might be in the minority. I don't know. I might be kind of in rare form on this one. The checkered pattern, which is fairly common, um, makes this game almost impossible for me to play. So I had to
Yeah,
approach.
I had that same note. There's a lot of games from this era. Well, not a lot, but there's a few games that look exactly like this, where it has the checkered floor pattern to have the 3D effect. And the one that always comes to my mind is World Runner on the original NES.
Right. That's a great example. And not only that, this game also has a checkered ceiling at times. So unfortunately, so I did approach reviewing this game a little differently, did a little extra reading, did a little extra listening, because with my eyes, after a few minutes, I have to put it down. Um, and honestly, like it's just not worth me trying it if I know I'm going to get nauseous and dizzy, like trying to play a game. So I do have to disqualify myself just a little bit, but I wrote down I think the enemies look great. Similar to is it did Altered Beast also use human audio as well? I can't remember,
I
but
know it had like, I don't know about human, but I know it definitely had like sound effect audio stuff going on.
human sound effects.
Yeah.
So this one also uses those human sound effects, which I thought was um, a bold choice for the time. But overall, I think this game looks really nice um, as as a launch title. So, how was your gameplay experience?
Like I said, it reminded me of that of the NES title, and then another game that we've done on here before is Sin and Punishment, which would be, you know, a future version of this type of game. It's one of those things where all of these feel like the same game, you know, so there's not a whole lot to say. If this is the type of game you like, I'm sorry there's not more of these, because this does seem like something that they could do a really cool version of, and maybe I'm just ignorant and don't know, but like I feel like a modern version of this would be really cool, almost like a Star Fox type game. So yeah, I wish they would make more of these types of things. But as far as my enjoyment of it's one of those things where I think I'll throw on every now and then. I don't know if I'll ever do a full playthrough of this type of game, but I do get like you know, I do occasionally get a inkling to be playing something like this.
I do as well. It's just, yeah, it's just a little unfortunate that I experienced something with this game that I rarely experience with other games. Like I've brought up games like Quake or Doom, where I kind of I can only play for a little while before my eyes and my I just start to feel a little bit dizzy and nauseous. But this one instantly, and it is as far as gameplay goes, I think it's a pretty unforgiving game as as far as what I've seen, and I think that's pretty on par for games that were released for this time. There's lots of ways to die. It's pretty fast, and I'm sure it's a hard game to master as well.
Well, two things that
Um,
stood out to me about my experience with it is, number one is this was the type of game, I think I've talked about this on here before. I can't remember what game it would have been for, but Sega did this a lot where they would release sequels to arcade games on the home console. So you'd get Space Harrier 2, and there is no Space Harrier 1. But that was like confusing for me because I don't know, I like playing series in order. So I would always wonder why I couldn't find Space Harrier 1. And I feel like I brought this up before, I just can't remember. I always thought it was weird that Sega would make like arcade sequels for the home console. And the other thing that stood out to me about my experience with it is, I don't I don't know about you. Does it feel weird for you playing Sega Genesis games? I've had this feeling ever since the Nintendo Wii Virtual Console. Playing Sega Genesis games on anything other than an original Genesis controller, because there's something very specific about the way those three buttons are laid out that doesn't translate to a four button setup for me.
I think it comes up the majority of times we review Genesis games, right? Um, because there's just there has not been a good solution yet. And I mean, do you have a good solution for it?
No, other than the fact that they sell a Genesis controller that's compatible with the
That's it.
Switch, but um other than that, no, it seems like it shouldn't be a problem. Like in your mind, you're like, okay, well, I have four buttons and I only need three, but my mind can never remember which button correlates to A, B, or C because I don't know, something about it being in a straight line on the Sega Genesis controller versus being in a square pattern on
Yeah.
every modern controller. It's just, I don't know, it's just weird, man.
Right. Yeah. Like the simple solution is having the Genesis controller. Another possible solution is uh giving us more options of how we can set up our controllers and the way that we play the game. But outside of that, I just don't know. Like, like have a virtual controller where you can actually physically change the layout. Because yeah, I think it's all because it's not linear. So you're not thinking ABC, you're thinking like ABY, or you're thinking, it's just much different than if you're someone who, like me, I play a lot of Switch games, and then I play a lot of like PC or Steam Deck where the A, B, X, Y are switched. And that's perfectly fine because they're set up in a diamond.
Yeah.
But the linear part is frustrating, right? It's frustrating that there's not like a simple solution beyond just having the specific controller for it. I'm with you. Space Harrier. Speaking of what you said, Space Harrier II was a launch title. So the six were Space Harrier II, Alex Kidd and the Enchanted Castle, Altered Beast, Last Battle, Thunder Force 2, and Tommy Lasorda Baseball. Do you remember anything about the launch of the system? Because although
So
it's not uncommon for systems to launch and not have a huge game, like I'm kind of unsure about where Sega's direction was at the time.
So this is another thing that goes along with what I said about them releasing sequels to arcade games, and I would always be like, "Well, where's Space Harrier 1?" I don't think I heard of the Sega Genesis. It did not hit my neighborhood, in an age before internet. Um, I don't know how I was missing the advertising on TV, because there's been a lot of talk about the console wars back then, and the Sega does what Nintendo don't advertising. But I never basically heard of a Sega Genesis until the year they started the pack-in game with Sonic the Hedgehog 2. And I remember that being confusing for me at the time too, because I'm like, how do you have a new system with Sonic 2 being the launch title? Where's Sonic 1? Because I had no idea the Sega Genesis wasn't their first system. I don't think I even heard of the what's the Master System, right? That's the first one. I had not heard of the Master System until way, way later. It might have even been like PlayStation 2 era that I heard of the Master System. So yeah, to me, this was like Sega's first system because it was competing with the NES at the time, and it was starting with Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and I'm like, where's Sonic the Hedgehog? So I know they had like mascot issues in the beginning too, which we've also brought up on the podcast. They started with, you remember we talked about Professor a Saban. He was like a little magician bunny rabbit that they would put in their
Right.
instruction booklets. And then my favorite guy, who I forgot about until we started talking here, is they also had Dr. Games was their mascot for a little bit, which I think they should have stuck with. I love that. Like, hey, I'm Dr. Games. What do you need, kids? I got your games right here. Um, and then their next mascot was Opa Opa, which is this weird spaceship looking thing. And that brings me to my next point, which is you pointed out another launch title along with the game we're talking about. Game Alex Kidd at the time was their mascot. They hadn't switched over to Sonic yet.
Yeah, the direction of Sega is so interesting. Uh, it's almost as if they were just their identity was like just constantly they were just were in this constant state of not being sure. I mean, they had. Sun, I guess, was like their mascot, but just the evolution of that whole company and hardware doing well and then not doing well. I would like to say, I would like to say that it's different. That like, oh, this system released, and they released a couple of sequels to arcade games that came out in Japan. I would like to say it's different, but it's really not. I mean, we saw in this current generation, I'm going to call it, systems release without a plan. Maybe a plan, but they didn't have games or a big game ready day one. Which, again, I say it every week now that I'm sure Nintendo is releasing a huge game day one alongside their new system. So
Yeah,
yeah,
the Console Wars documentary did a great job of covering basically how weird Sega was at the time, because the thing is, it was basically two separate companies, whereas Nintendo was running themselves as one company, one vision. There was, Sega of America and Sega of Japan, and that's how you end up down the line with a lot of crazy directions they ran in with putting out the 32, the CD, Sega CD, and then the 32X, and then the all the three systems in 3 years type of thing. Um, so yeah, that's a great documentary I recommend, and it's just really weird that they were trying to run it as like two separate things completely that just kind of shared some inventory, but had two completely different visions for how the systems would be marketed.
yeah. Well, didn't we do a game recently where Nintendo had the same issue? Like, what game did we do? Yeah, wasn't there a game that was made in America and I can't remember it now. I'll remember it later.
Oh, you might
But
be thinking of the Super Punch Out didn't go to Japan until some weird like service they had to a kiosk, and you could download games onto a disc.
it might have been something like that. I'm trying to think of a game. It was it was developed in America and then it was delayed. I'm moving on because I don't remember. Um, so so yeah. Kevin, where would you rank this game, and who would you recommend this game to?
I ranked it right with Sin and Punishment. I put Sin and Punishment above it, but it's a little more accessible of a game. Trying to find where that is on my list. I lost my spot. But yeah, I feel like it's obviously the same type of game as Sin and Punishment. So if I'm in the mood for that type of game, probably going to play Sin and Punishment first because, like I said, it's more accessible. It's a Nintendo 64 game. It also has that cool kind of mystique about the fact that it wasn't released over here. So it took forever for people to get access to it. Um, but yeah, I'm ranking it at an even number 50 on my list, which is pretty much in the middle at this point. I mean, I have 80 games on this list. So Sin and Punishment is at 49, this game's at 50, and then at 51 is another Sega Genesis game, Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine.
And for reference, I believe the only other rail shooter that we've played is at number 38 on your list. And that would be
Oh yeah.
N64 Pokemon Snap. Right. Those are the only ones that we've played that we would consider to be rail shooters, right?
And how have we not had a
Um,
Star Fox game come up in the shuffle yet?
yeah. So, I mean, if it seems like if you want to learn about rail shooters, you need to play this game. It seems like this is like one of the one like there's not that many of them in like the historic genre. Like I hear about this one a lot. I hear about like Panzer Dragoon. Um, so I would definitely recommend um, trying this out if you're interested in the history of rail shooters or just interested in playing an old rail shooter. Don't let my experience of getting nauseous or anything because some people that happens with some people and some games. I think a lot of people can relate to that. I put Space Harrier II at number 55 just to be fair about everything. And for reference, um, Pokemon Snap is at number 51. I actually hate Pokemon Snap. I just I don't like that game at all. I think Pokemon should do just like not open like it's like open world Pokemon Snap game. I never liked the replayability of either the N64 or the new Switch game. But anyways, I digress. Sin and Punishment I had at number 20. I like Sin and Punishment. I mean, by far, if I were to play one of the three, it would be Sin and Punishment, um, which is just like an upgraded version of what we played today.
And I would also recommend this to any of those people who have one of those. There's like 6 different versions of the Sega Genesis, the Sega Mega Drive, whatever you want to call it, classics collections that they put out where it has like 50 games on there. It's on, I'm looking at the list right now of all the different versions. It's on the first one. It's on the one that's considered the gold, the Steam, and the console version. So for some reason they didn't put it on volume 2, 3, 4, or 5, but there's a lot of these. So there's
A
volume
lot.
1 through 5, then there's gold, console, and Steam. And this game is on volume 1, it's on gold, it's on console, and it's on Steam. So chances are if you have one of those Sega Classics collections, it's on there, and I'd recommend it's definitely one of the games on there worth playing. Where did it go?
Oh,
Where
what are
did
we
it
playing next time?
Trying to find where it went on this list. Space Harrier II. Here it is. All right. So yeah, I was just confirming what I just said is true, and it is. Okay. Um. All right. Yeah. Let's spin the old randomizer and figure out what we're going to be playing next week. So the game it shows this is one I've been looking forward to playing. It's kind of a recent addition within the last year to Switch Online, if I remember correctly. It's the Super Nintendo, originally a Japanese only release, and it's not translated. It's one of those amazing Amazing Hibriki. It's a fighting game. It's a multiplayer fighting game where you fight as these cute little mascots. I played it for a few seconds the day it went on Switch Online, and it's my only knowledge of the game is that it seemed pretty cool. I remember at the time thinking like it felt like a Super Nintendo version of Smash Brothers if Smash Brothers just had generic characters. So, yeah, look
Sounds
forward
fun.
to that. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm joking. Keep going.
What'd you say?
I said sounds fun. Yeah, it's Smash Brothers with generic characters. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, it's just
We're
it's
reaching
like
the end of the
it's a
episode.
it's like a a battle royale, like everyone on screen at the same time fighting game. 4 players, by the way, which there's not a lot of on the Super Nintendo.
Right. Right. If only I had 3 friends. Huh.
And that
Okay.
weird little plug-in thing you needed.
Right. 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 Okay. Okay. Well, it's going to be a new game for both of us then.
Yes, it will. And as always, keep in mind we're Nintendo fans, not Nintendo experts. So if we got anything wrong, especially how I pronounced the Spotlight game there, amazing Hibriki, let us know. Let us know in an email at nintendotherapypod@gmail.com. We're also on Twitter. You search Nintendo Therapy on Reddit, you'll find us. You search Nintendo Therapy on Twitter, you'll find us. And if we're not where you want us, tell us and we'll get there. Other than that, thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back next week, and hopefully there's more Nintendo news. Oh, and we got a surprise for you next week. Stay tuned for that.